All right, welcome to the Inside the Birds Week 3 NFL preview. And the NFL is off to a flying start. You have 9 teams that entered Week 3 at 2-0, which is very interesting. Two divisions have two 2-0 teams. So a lot of teams off to a flying start. Got an interesting game. You got the Steelers and Chargers are two of those 2-0 teams. They'll be facing each other. One of those teams is going to be 3-0 after this weekend. And who would have predicted that? Obviously, you see a lot of injuries. Injuries have impacted the NFL very early. Miami loses Tua. The Chiefs lose Pacheco. Jordan Love wasn't available in week 2. We'll see if he's able to play for the Packers this weekend. You got Nakua and Kupp out for the Rams, along with their offensive line. The Niners, no McCaffrey, no Debo, Kittle, A.J. Brown out still for the Eagles, Keenan Allen, Russell Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Njoku. So a lot of injuries are impacting NFL games for the first 2 weeks and will have a big impact here in week 3. Last week, you heard me tell you that the trend has changed for the West Coast teams that travel to the East Coast and play 1 o'clock games. It used to be a foregone conclusion that the West Coast teams would lose that game. They would travel, they would play a 1 o'clock game, they wouldn't be adjusted to the time zone, and you could almost bet no matter what the line was that the home team, the East Coast team, was going to win that game. That's changed a lot. I talked about it last week. And sure enough, you had all three West Coast teams that traveled to the East Coast for games last week won. Seattle won in overtime in New England, traveling from the West to the East Coast. The Chargers went to Carolina and they throttled the Carolina Panthers 26-3. And then, of course, in the big upset of the week last week, the Raiders. I still consider them West Coast, even though they're Las Vegas now and not in California. They go all the way out to Baltimore and they win 26-23, upset special of the week. So that trend that has reversed continues, where travel just is not as big of a deal as it used to be in the NFL. And you see that somewhat this week. There are 5 road favorites this week in the NFL, 4 alone in the 4 o'clock games. So you got 4 home dogs in the 4 o'clock games, and we'll get to that in a second. You don't want to start off 0-2, but it's not, the worst thing in the world. As we talk about some teams that you didn't expect to be 0-2, like the Ravens right now. It was last year the Houston Texans started off 0-2. They won the AFC South in 2022. The Bengals started off 0-2. They won the and the AFC North. So all hope isn't lost if you are well, maybe if you're the Broncos or the Giants, all hope is lost. And of course the Panthers. But if you're the Rams at 0-2 and you're dealing with injuries, maybe not all hope is lost. And certainly the Colts and the Jags 0-2 right now, the Ravens and the Bengals 0-2 right now. Life will change for some of those teams. Not all of them, but some of them. It's too early. Now, go to 0-3, and we've got ourselves a different story. You got 2 Monday Night Football games, Jacksonville at Buffalo, and then Washington at Cincinnati. That makes this week a little bit more interesting. You get extra primetime action there. And, as far as the Thursday night game, you saw the Jets get a big win. They needed that. Aaron Rodgers needed to start to play better for them. They beat the Patriots. They really dominated the game. You would expect them. I know the Patriots beat the Bengals in the opener, and they gave the Seahawks a pretty good game in week 2, but they just don't have anything offensively. And the Jets, even with losing Jermaine Johnson, even with being banged up in other areas of their defense, they were home. They needed that. Aaron Rodgers playing the first game at MetLife since tearing his Achilles. Needed to come out and have a good game. They had to get the tight end involved more. They hadn't been doing that the first 2 weeks. They did. Interesting what you're seeing develop in the Jets backfield as their rookie running back, Braylon Allen, young kid out of Wisconsin. Good running back. And you saw that in the preseason. they're starting to mix him in with Breece Hall and giving them both. I wouldn't quite call it a committee. Breece Hall still getting more of the carries, but obviously the Jets running game behind their rebuilt offensive line doing the work so far as the passing game does come together. It was a big win for the Jets because they got to 2-1, and they're trying to play this game here with Hassan Reddick. Do they sign him? Do they cave? Do they give in to his contract demands? Do they bring him in because they lost Jermaine Johnson for the year, unfortunately for them? But now they're 2-1, and you got Denver up next for the Jets. So you should be 3-1 going into a 4-game patch where you'll have a 3-game patch after that, where you have the Vikings, the Bills, and the Steelers. The Bills are obviously a tough team. Steelers can be tough. Minnesota off to one of those teams off to a 2-0 start. But if the Jets can be 3-1 after the Broncos and they can continue to get good defense, I mean, they had 7 sacks against the Patriots. And Will McDonald, in his second year, is off to a good start. He's got 5 sacks. Makes them less inclined to want to give in immediately to Hassan Reddick's demands. And then the cat and mouse game continues. Remember, Reddick needs to play at least 6 games to accrue a season and to get paid. Or else, if he's that dug in that he's going to sit out the entire year, good luck to him trying to find that contract next year, north of 31 at that point, not playing the last year, not playing for 2 different teams because of his contract demands. That's tough. I know he's a premier pass rusher, but he's not a spring chicken. And missing a whole year, that didn't work out for Le'Veon Bell, and I don't think it's going to work out for Reddick. And the more that the Jets can win without Reddick, the less they're going to feel the need to cave to his demands. And eventually, Hassan Reddick's going to have to play if he wants to accrue a season. Is he going to miss all 10 games? Is he going to miss 10 games, 10 or 11 games, try to play the 6 games and hope that, he's on the roster the entire time to get his money to accrue a season? That could be a dangerous game to play. Right now, he's on the do not report list, so it doesn't count these games he's playing because he's not on the active roster. He's not on IR. He's not on PUP. You can be on any one of those lists and accrue games. You can't be on the do not report list and accrue games played. So right now, Hassan Reddick has not played 3 games, and the Jets have 14 regular season games left, and he's got to play at least 6 to accrue a season. So we'll see how that goes. But important win for the Jets. And for the Pats, it's going to be a rough season. You saw Drake May get in at the end of the game. They have a very tough schedule. I don't know if they're going to go to Drake May anytime soon, especially since they were able to win 1 game, 1-2. I don't know if they're going to feel that pressure to have to go right to May and play until maybe they're officially eliminated. Their schedule is brutal. I mean, they opened up against the Bengals. They were able to win, lose to Seattle, lose to the Jets. You got the 49ers, Dolphins, and Texans up next. Now, maybe the Dolphins won't be the same without Tua. The 49ers are banged up, but I still don't think that these are going to be, easy games by any stretch of the means for the Patriots. The Texans will be difficult. They'll play the Jets 2 weeks again after the Texans game. So it's kind of a tough stretch there. I'm looking for the area where you might want to get. They don't have a bye week until week 14. So maybe if you want to get Drake May in, you get him after that second Jets game, then it's at Titans, at Bears, 2 road games, home versus the Rams. I don't know when they want to get Drake May in as a starter. So we'll just see what goes on with the Patriots. But we knew it was going to be a tough year. Hey, at least you like the fact that for the first 2 weeks, they won a game. They were in a game against Seattle. Wheels came off against the Jets. Obviously, they couldn't protect. And we'll see if they can continue to hang in games. Usually when you lose a game like this, you have to come back, play again. If they lose a bad one of the 49ers, you might start to see the wheels fall off for that franchise. All right, let's get into the 1:00 games on Sunday. Giants at Browns. Cleveland is a 6-point favorite. The Cleveland has not looked good at all, but the Giants are snake bit. I mean, they get 3 touchdown passes out of Daniel Jones. 3, and they only give up field goals to Washington, and yet they still lose. Uh, they lose basically because their kicker gets hurt on the opening kick. Then the punter had to come in to miss a PAT. Then they have to go for it on their touchdowns, and they fail on their 2-point conversions. So they end up losing to Washington in a game that they probably should have won. They're snake bit. There's no reason that they should have lost that game, given that they had touchdowns and Washington only had field goals. The problem is the Giants' defense has been terrible. I mean, it's a tie game, 18-18, and then they let Washington go 65 yards on the final drive to win the game 21-18. And literally, Washington gets a 34-yard pass from Jaden Daniels to Noah Brown, who had 56 yards, by the way. Noah Brown's a guy who was out there. Could the Eagles have signed Noah Brown instead of giving up a third-round pick for Jahan Dotson? Well, the Washington gave up Dotson to the Eagles and then signed Noah Brown. Brown had 3 catches for 66 yards. Dotson has 1 catch in 2 games with the Eagles. Just an interesting, Brown is a guy who played in Kellen Moore's scheme. But anyway, back to the Giants. They just invent ways to lose. Now, they did do a good job of getting the ball to Malik Neighbors. They got him the ball 18 times. 18 times. That's unbelievable. There were 25 total pass attempts. I'm sorry, 28 total pass attempts for Daniel Jones. Malik Neighbors got 18 of them, 10 for 127 and a touchdown. Had a bad 4th down drop, though. He's a rookie. It's going to happen. But again, the defense not good. Robinson, 17 rushes, 133 yards. Washington converts 50% of its 3rd downs. I'm surprised. The Giants are missing Wink Martindale. He brought something. I thought that having Bowen as their defensive coordinator and relying on their front 4 rush a little bit more and not blitzing as much would be good for the defense. I thought their defense would be a strong point with Brian Burns now and Dexter Lawrence and Thibodeau, but they've been awful. 49 points allowed in 2 games. Not good for the New York Giants. And now, if you don't beat the Browns in Cleveland and you start off 0-3, you got the Cowboys up next after that. They have the Thursday night game, then the Seahawks, then Cincinnati, then the Eagles, then Pittsburgh. Sorry, folks. If you're a Giants fan, 0-8 seems very, very realistic if they lose to the Browns. If you can't beat the Browns, you're not going to beat any of those other 5 teams. And at 0-8, the Quinn Ewers sweepstakes will be on for the New York Giants. As for the Browns, look, do you credit them for going into Jacksonville and getting a win after getting destroyed by the Cowboys in the opener? Yeah, give them credit. I still don't think Deshaun Watson looks right offensively. He lives to see another day with Jameis Winston looking over his shoulder. But that team has to continue to win. He has to look better. He wasn't that effective. Didn't even throw a touchdown against the Jaguars. He hasn't been driving the ball, but they got a win. So they're 2-1. I'm sorry, they're 1-1. If they beat the Giants, they'll be 2-1. That'll be interesting for them. If they lose, if they don't look good offensively, you wonder how much longer do they stick with Deshaun Watson with Jameis Winston looking over the shoulder. We all saw what Joe Flacco did last year when he stepped in for the Browns and was able to run the offense efficiently. Jameis Winston can play. Does he turn the ball over? Yes. He's also thrown 50 touchdowns in a season. If you're asking me who's looked like a better quarterback, Deshaun Watson over the last year and a half or 2 has been banged up, or Jameis Winston, probably tell you Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston can play. And in that offense, you got Amari Cooper there. You got Jerry Jeudy. Now, Njoku's hurt. That's tough. It's tough for them to win, but when he gets back in that offense, I think Jameis Winston could be a good quarterback. But for now, they go with Deshaun Watson and they see what happens. Texans and Vikings. Texans 2.5-point favorites going into a surprising Minnesota team that is 2-0. It's a good matchup. It's a fun matchup. Gotta like what Kevin O'Connell has done so far for the Minnesota Vikings. This is one of those matchups between 2 teams that are 2-0. Kevin O'Connell is showing you that he's an elite play caller. He's been one for a little bit now. I think they're just starting to notice now that they move on from Kirk Cousins to Sam Darnold that Kevin O'Connell knows what he's doing as a play caller. So the Vikings put up over 400 yards on the San Francisco defense. And on the flip side, Brian Flores is doing a great job as defensive play caller, defensive coordinator. The Niners were 2 of 10 on third down. They sacked Brock Purdy 5 times last week, picked him off once. Now, Minnesota, if this continues for them, they continue to get good play out of Sam Darnold. They continue to get very good defensive play. They could be a real threat. They can make this NFC North into a 3-horse race. The Lions, everybody expect, they were my pick to go to the Super Bowl. The Packers, we'll talk about them in a minute. They're off to a good start. They're a good team. The Vikings if they come out of this at 3-0, or they lose a tough one to the Texans here, but show you that they're pretty legit. Now you got a nice 3-team horse race there in the NFC North with the Vikings, the Lions, and the Packers. Obviously, the Bears, some thought that they would make the playoffs this year because of what they've added. They got some ground they got to make up. We'll talk about them a little bit. They're a competitive team. You know, they were competing with the Texans for a little bit there, but they're not ready yet. Meanwhile, the Vikings, they're showing you they could be ready. Now, they're getting good running game too. You know, they picked up the Packers running back, Aaron Jones, but it's been Ty Chandler who's been running the ball for them really well. Now, Jefferson's banged up for them. See if he plays. Jordan Addison could be back. He hasn't even been in the offense yet. So that's always obviously big deal for them. And then at some point later in the season, TJ Hawkinson will come back. So this Vikings team is a really fun team to watch, and we'll see if they can give the Texans a good game. The Texans, they've only been 3-0 one time before in their history. They beat the Bears. They really humbled that Bears offensive line. Danielle Hunter, that's, by the way, what's really interesting about this game is that the Texans had a really nice pass rusher in Jonathan Grenard. He was a free agent. He signed with the Vikings. The Vikings had a very good pass rusher. We all know him, Danielle Hunter. He wound up signing with the Texans. He had 1.5 sacks for the Vikings last week against the Bears. Mixon is a little banged up for them. Not really worried about it. They have 3 of the best receivers right now in the league, and Nico Collins, Steph Diggs, and Tank Dell. I think we just need to talk about this Texans defense, though, a little bit more than just C.J. Stroud and his arm. Stroud's great. This offense can be very good, but this Texans defense now with Hunter, with Stingley at cornerback, well, with their linebacker crew that they have, it's a very fast linebacker crew, good defensive linemen with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, D'Amico Ryans calling the shots there. This is a tough Texans team that's probably going to win the AFC South again. Chargers at Steelers. I mentioned another battle of teams that are both 2-0. Now, if you're the type of person that loves the way the NFL game is played today, you know, you love the high-flying, high-octane offenses. You love the quarterback slinging the ball around. You like the 35 to 31 games. If that's you, this game you will have no interest in it. If you're the type of person who loves the old school football, the running game, the defense, the sacks, the hard tackles, then this is a must-watch game for you. You've got Jim Harbaugh already off to a 2-0 start with Chargers, playing exactly the type of football you would have expected the Chargers to play. Ground and pound offense. They're running the ball with J.K. Dobbins. They're playing defense. They're controlling the line of scrimmage with their great offensive line. Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater. They're doing exactly what you would expect a Jim Harbaugh team to do. The quarterback's a little banged up. We'll see if Herbert, I know he's dealing with some foot injury. We'll see how he's going to play. Obviously, the same thing with the Steelers. They're preparing to have Justin Fields play again. If they keep winning, if they go to 3-0 with Justin Fields playing and getting better, then Justin Fields is going to stay the quarterback. That I don't see how you wouldn't if they go to 3-0 and Justin Fields is playing well and getting better. He played better in week 2 than week 1. If he plays well against this 2-0 Chargers team, they're going to stick with him. If not, then maybe you see them go to Russell Wilson for their next game. The Chargers are getting a lot out of Dobbins. He's gone over 100 yards twice. Now, it's a little bit flukish. I mean, he went for 131 on 17 carries in his first game. I think he had 13 carries, went over 100 yards. I mean, if they're going to run him into the ground, and he has such a big injury history that, we'll see if he's even available to keep running, if he's healthy by week 6, by week 7. But the Chargers are going to run. Greg Roman's going to run. Jim Harbaugh is going to run. And right now that they are getting their running backs in and out of there and using that offensive line. Now, they were able to unlock Quentin Richardson. He had 2 touchdowns against the Panthers last week. That's a good sign for them. The first round pick, it did nothing last year. Ladd McConkey had a touchdown in the opener. So if you can unlock Quentin Richardson deep off play action because you run the ball so well and get McConkey going, then maybe you have enough playmakers to move the chains. But the Steelers defense is tough. I think they're really tough, and I don't think that's going to be easy. I kind of like the Steelers in this game. They're 1.5-point favorites, which showed you how closely these teams are in both style and coaching and how they're aligned. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Steelers come out of this and go to 3-0, which would be incredible for them, as most people, myself included, did not see them getting into the playoffs this year, despite their always being in the playoffs under Mike Tomlin. They've only scored 31 points in 2 games. They're going to have to in this game here. The first team to score 20 points is going to win. Book that. The first team to score 20 points in this Chargers Steelers game will win. If it's the Steelers, if they go to 3-0, big feather in the cap of Mike Tomlin and Justin Fields. Bears at Colts. This is an interesting game. The Colts offense, now the Colts are favored by 1. They are home. The Colts offense, you saw this against the Packers. I told you to watch out for the Packers last week, even though Malik Willis is starting. I told you Matt LaFleur is an elite play caller. I love Shane Steichen as a play caller. We have to remember, Anthony Richardson has not started not only a lot of NFL games at quarterback, he just hasn't started a lot of total games at quarterback. At Florida, he only had 1 season. In high school, he played different positions. This guy has not been playing quarterback his whole life. And so what you see when you watch the Colts offense is you see it's very feast or famine. Richardson has a huge arm, undeniably big arm, cannon arm, and he can make some unbelievable downfield throws. He can also run and take off and be a threat in the running game at any time. But when you watch the offense, they're very feast or famine. Even when they played Houston in the opener, it was a close game because they had about 4 or 5 shot plays. All right. They don't have a deliberate offense. They don't have a sustainable ball control, middle of the field passing offense. They'll rely a lot on the run game. They'll obviously rely on Anthony Davis. But in the passing game, it feels like right now it's either going to be a shot play or it's not, or an Anthony Richardson run, but there's not going to be a whole lot in the middle. They've got to be able to establish that, especially if they're going to beat the better defensive teams. And the Bears have a great defense. Bears are off to a rough start, but don't blame the defense. They have some really good defensive players. It's going to be, can the Bears win this game? Yes, they can, especially with the Colts are being a little banged up on defense right now in the pass rush. The Bears need to find a team that's not, not the Houston Texans like they played last week. They need to find a team that's a little bit more beatable for them to be able to have a little faith in them. They played the Titans in the opener. They did win the game. The Titans have a good defense. So this is similar. They can beat the Colts in Indianapolis. But again, the Colts can break your back, and they'll get Josh Downs back. I think in this game, we'll see if he plays. If they get him back, might help their pass offense. They really got to unlock Michael Pittman. He hasn't been much of a factor so far, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Bears won this game. I'm not worried about Caleb Williams. I know he turned the ball over twice against the Texans. I told you that this defense of the Bears is good enough so that if Caleb Williams does not make mistakes, they can win games. He limited his mistakes in week 1, and they won against the Titans. Week 2, a little bit harder when you have to face the Texans and that defense that the Texans have in Houston. He did turn the ball over, mainly because he was getting hit. Guy was on the run. The offensive line has not looked good so far. They've tried to fix the offensive line, the Bears. It hasn't looked great against the Texans. So we'll see if we can get back on track. Um, but the Colts have the worst rushing defense in the league. I know a lot of people think that the Eagles, after their performance against the Falcons, should have the worst rushing defense. The Eagles have the worst yards allowed per carry, but the Bears have allowed the most yards per game. I'm sorry, the Colts have allowed the most yards per game on the ground. So maybe this is a game where you get DeAndre Swift the ball a little more. You take the pressure off Caleb Williams, and then maybe if Kalen can get some of his receivers healthy there, he can make some things happen in the passing game. Wouldn't shock me if the Bears came out of this game with a win. Eagles at Saints. Obviously, we'll talk about this game more in the pregame show, Inside the Birds pregame show, Sunday morning. It'll drop 6 a.m. I'll just tell you this now. Two things stand out to me. You're never as bad as you are uh, when you're at your worst point. The Eagles were at their worst point defensively against the Falcons, and the Saints. I don't think you're as. It's as the saying goes. You're never as bad as you think you are when you're losing. You're never as good as you think you are when you're winning. The Saints have scored 40 points in back-to-back games. I think they scored on 10 straight touchdowns on 10 straight possessions from week 1 to week 2. All right, that is not sustainable. Are they better, the Saints? Absolutely. Has Clint Kubiak made a difference in their offense? Absolutely. Is the Superdome one of the toughest places to play when the Saints are merely mediocre? Yes. And the Eagles will have to deal with that. It'll be loud. It'll be raucous. It'll be crazy at the Superdome. Those fans are lunatics, and I mean that respectfully. It is a very, very difficult place to play. The Eagles have lost 3 straight games there and 4 of 5 going back to 2007. They've only won there once since the start of the 2001 season. So we're talking about a 23-year span where it's been difficult to go to New Orleans and win. So the Eagles have a lot on their hands, but I expect them to play a lot better, especially on defense, than they did. I think this game will be closer than maybe some people who are all doom and gloom right now think. The Saints are only the fact that the Saints are 3-point favorites at home, right? When they're 2-0 and lighting it up offensively and defensively, and they're facing an Eagles team that very could be 0-2. I mean, they lose to the Falcons. They could have lost to the Packers. That was a close game. They had to come back in the fourth quarter to win that game. The fact that the Saints are only 3-point favorites shows you that the people who study this game and come up with these lines, they don't believe the Eagles are as bad as they showed to be in that game against the Falcons. 1 o'clock game, Broncos at Bucs. The Buccaneers are 7-point favorites. They're off to a great start. That's another one of those maybe surprising 2-0 teams at this stage of the game. Gotta love what they've been able to do with Baker Mayfield. Offensively, they're getting Bucky Irving, their running back, involved more as Rachaad White sort of continues to struggle to be an efficient running back. But hey, 2-0. And you can't really argue with that, especially coming off the success they had at the end of last year. And right now, they welcome a Broncos team that's just not good right now. Now, they will get better. I believe that they'll get better. Bo Nix just needs to get more comfortable in this offense. He needs to get more comfortable with what Sean Payton wants him to do. It's going to take time. I think we should have expected that. I guarantee you, just like they were awful defensively last year and they gave up 70 points to the Miami Dolphins, and everybody thought this Broncos defense was going to be historically bad. Then come October, November, the Broncos are way better on defense. They've turned it around. They even, for a little bit there, flirted with the idea of being a wild card team. Peyton is too good of a coach for this offense to be as terrible as it has been. And it has been bad. Bo Nix is struggling. And the offense has no running game. All right. Javonte Williams, 40 yards on 19 carries in 2 games. I did not see that coming. But they've also played some tough teams. They had to play the Steelers, a really good defense. They'll get better, but they've got to get through this really difficult stretch where they opened against Seattle, then they played Pittsburgh, and now Bo Nix has to see this Todd Bowles blitz-happy defense for the first time. I mean, Todd Bowles is going to throw the kitchen sink at Bo Nix. So this could get ugly. The Bucs are 7-point favorites. I think that's fair. I really do. They probably could win this game by double digits, especially with it being in Tampa. It's probably going to be hot and humid. The Florida teams always enjoy that kind of advantage. It's a big number, but it's definitely doable. But even after this game, then Bo and the Broncos got to go face the Jets defense the week after that. This is why I'm telling you, don't expect much from the Broncos for the first 6 or 7 weeks, but just look to see if they get better. Look to see if Bo Nix starts to understand what Sean Payton wants him to do in this offense. Look to see if he can get the ball to Courtland Sutton more, because Courtland Sutton's a good wide receiver. As for the Bucs, they continue to just get better. That was a very, very impressive win. Rematch of the NFC divisional game. They go to Detroit, where they lost last year in the playoffs, and they edge out the 20-16 win. Well, let's hold off now on the Falcons and the Saints winning the division because the Bucs look just as tough. We know that Todd Bowles is a great defensive coordinator. Got Jared Goff to throw 2 picks. Now they're dealing with some injuries. Vita Vea, that'll be a tough loss for a few weeks. He sprained his MCL. Now Vita Vea is the type of player that the Eagles were hoping Jordan Davis could be. Vita Vea is a big 330, 40-pound guy who's just agile and a great athlete, comes out of a great program in Washington, known for developing good defensive players. He's fast. He can move people. He can rush the passer. He can stop the run. That's what the Eagles were hoping that Jordan Davis was going to become. Jordan Davis has not become that player yet. Vita Vea is that player for this Bucs defensive front. And him being out probably changes things a little bit, but they have enough firepower both on offense and defense to be able to beat the Broncos. Packers Titans. Titans are 3-point favorites at home. I'm sorry. Yeah. Titans are 3-point favorites at home against the Packers. This line's a little bit head scratching to me. I told you last week, the Packers are going to be tough, even though they are starting Malik Willis, who just got there. I told you LaFleur is an elite play caller. All right. He showed it to be. He made sure that Malik Willis was not put in positions to fail. He rode Josh Jacobs to 151 rushing yards. His defense with the new defensive coordinator, which looked terrible in the opener because the guys were falling all over the place, looked a whole lot better last week. A lot better. Time of possession in that game for the Packers, right? Everybody thought the Packers were going to be in trouble. Everybody thought Malik Willis was going to struggle, turn the ball over. People thought, I don't know if they can handle this Colts defense. Well, they held the Colts to 20 minutes of ball possession, and they themselves held the ball for 40 minutes. That's right. They were 2-1 in time of possession over the Colts. Okay. That's how good LaFleur is. He's an elite play caller in this league. And we'll see what happens. I know Jordan Love was practicing. They said he was going to be a game time decision. Might get Jordan Love back for this game. If I were the Packers, I don't know if I'd play him because I would think that maybe I can beat the Titans even with Malik Willis. I mean, I just beat the Colts. Can I beat the Titans on the road? Maybe a little bit tougher. Titans have a very good defense too, but I wouldn't want to rush Jordan Love back, especially coming off the win. But hey, if Jordan Love can play and he's good to go, you play him. And if you play him and you're 3-point dogs to the Titans, you got to feel really good. I would feel really good I feel good about the Packers being able to win this game even without Jordan Love, but I would feel better, way better if they had Jordan Love. Now, the Titans have some talent. They have good talent on defense, probably better defense than people thought. Now, last week you saw something you very rarely see in an NFL game. You saw their new head coach, Brian Callahan, go absolutely ballistic on Will Levis after one of his 2 turnovers. Now, you rarely see that. Maybe sometimes from a rookie head coach. You know, we saw it from, and we're We haven't seen it this year, but obviously Nick Sirianni as a head coach was very animated on the sideline. But you never saw Nick Sirianni go after his player, his starting quarterback, the way Callahan went after Levis. But if you see the way Will Levis has turned the ball over, you can understand it. He has an unbelievable arm, but he can be infuriating for a coach to watch. They were up 7-0 on the Jets. They were about to go up at least, if not 14-0, 10-0. They got a field goal. Then he tries to get out of the pocket. Then he tries some lateral shovel pass while he's being sacked. Instead, it's a fumble in the low red zone. The Jets get the ball, and an opportunity gets squandered. And you saw that he had a turnover against the Bears, a bad interception, and he had an interception against the Jets too. So he's had 3 bad turnovers in the first 2 games. And because of that, the Titans are 0-2, which is why I'm kind of surprised that they're favorited in this game. They are home, but I'm surprised that they are favorites against the Packers. Guess they got to win one game. Now, Levis has a great arm. You saw that on the Ridley touchdown. He's always had a great arm. You know, he's that yoked up quarterback who can make any throw, but he's too dangerous. He's too reckless. And they're going to be 0-3 if they lose this game. And I think that there's a good chance they can lose this game. And does that mean Mason Rudolph is looking over Will Levis' shoulder? Maybe. I mean, if the head coach is going to be that agitated by his starting quarterback that he's going to yell at him from the sideline, you always got to think that the backup quarterback is one play away, and that would be Mason Rudolph coming in if this Levis experiment continues to just result in turnover after turnover. All right, the 4:00 games. I told you it's a whole lot of home underdogs in the 4:00 games, starting, of course, with the Raiders and the Panthers. Raiders at Panthers is a 4:00 game here. Now, the Raiders are this is one of the few home favorites, as they should be. The Raiders are favorited by 5.5. It's fair number. I was up to 7. I think it finished at 5.5. Maybe you can still get them 7 somewhere. But either way, I don't know if the line moved because the Panthers are pulling the plug on Bryce Young. That's a surprise. Now, Dave Canales, the head coach, was brought to Carolina to be the quarterback whisperer for Bryce Young that he was last year for Baker Mayfield as the offensive coordinator in Tampa. He did a great job in Tampa, coming there from Seattle. Now he comes to Carolina a little early, but he's basically asked to be the quarterback whisperer for Bryce Young, and he pulls the plug on Young after 2 games. That is a major indictment of Bryce Young. And that, to me, signals that Canales was probably worried about what he was seeing from Bryce Young in training camp, in preseason games, and early on to have pulled the plug this soon. Does this mean it's done and it's over for Bryce Young? I don't know. I tend to think that the reason Canales is doing this and going with the veteran Dalton is because he wants Young to just take a step back, watch how the offense functions, see what a veteran like Dalton can do. They still have a bad offensive line, but you expect Dalton will figure out ways to get the ball to Deontay Johnson, get the ball to Adam Thielen, maybe get the rookie Xavier Legette more involved. This is a good spot here for Dalton to come in and just help move the chains. He's still going to have to deal with the bad offensive line, but good opportunity for him to know where he wants to go with the ball, get this offense a little bit on track. It'll look good for Dave Canales if Dalton can play well in this offense. And then maybe you start to see Bryce Young watching from the sideline, seeing the tape, getting a breather. Sometimes you see this guy. Sometimes guys just get so in their own heads that they need to take a step back. Could be a week, could be 2 weeks, could be a month. You know, Sam Darnold was awful for the Jets in a bad environment. Then he went to Carolina for a cup of coffee. Wasn't very good there. All right. Then he went to a good environment last year in San Francisco. Didn't get to play much, but he got to watch how that offense functioned. Got to watch Brock Purdy. Got to learn under Kyle Shanahan. I'm not trying to make Sam Darnold this year's definite comeback player of the year award winner, but he looks like a completely different quarterback in the Vikings offense. So maybe that's what Bryce Young needs here. Just take a step back, watch somebody else pilot the offense, get your mind clear. There's no pressure on you now. The only thing you wonder about is the owner. Does the owner, who is known to have really wanted Bryce Young, how does the owner feel about the coach he brought in to turn Bryce Young into a quarterback going immediately to the backup? That you got to look out for. I tend to think the owner won't be upset if the Panthers start figuring out ways to win. But this one will be tough. They got to go out to the Raiders, out to Vegas, and play a Raiders team that's coming off a good win. Listen, give them a lot of credit. They went to Baltimore. They were down 10. They came back, had a big fourth quarter. They're doing some interesting things up front. Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, Antonio Pierce, the defensive head coach. They're doing things with Christian Wilkins, and Max Crosby. They're figuring out ways to get pressure. They're not a great offensive team. I'm not going to say the Raiders are right in the thick of it here to challenge the Chiefs and maybe the Chargers, but that was an impressive win. And the defense has been solid. They're getting what they need out of Minshew. He was efficient against the Ravens. You know, Minshew's also looking over his shoulder. He's got Aiden O'Connell there, but he's been able to hold him off so far, even after they lost their first week to the Chargers. And you're getting what you want to see out of Brock Bowers. 9 catches, 98 yards against the Ravens. He's moving around. He's becoming someone who can be a nice complement in the pass game to Devontae Adams. It's not going to be a prolific pass game. It's going to be a move the ball deliberately, try to run a little bit, but mainly going to throw the ball to Bowers, throw the ball to Devontae Adams, and try to get offense. They're not a great offensive team. They were actually outgained by the Ravens 120 yards, but they won the game. So it kept them from going to 0-2, and now they're 1-1, and they welcome a Panthers team that's not very good, and they got a chance to go to 2-1. So good for Antonio Pierce and the Raiders if they're able to win that game. Dolphins, Seahawks. Now the Seahawks are at home. They are 4.5-point favorites in this game against Miami, as they should be. This is going to be the start of an interesting time period for the Dolphins as they go to Skylar Thompson, the backup in place of Tua. Tua goes to IR. I said when he got hurt, it's all about his health at that moment. Let's not speculate on his future. That was last week. Now we know what he's going to do. He's going to go on IR. I don't know. I don't have any intel on this or any inside information. Just from observing Tua so far, I tend to think he's going to try to keep playing. It's not for anybody else to tell him what to do. It seems like everybody's got an opinion. He should retire. He should retire. You know, I mean, I have my own thoughts on it too. I don't want to see anybody, Tua included, anybody. I don't want to see anyone who plays this game for our enjoyment, right? For their personal livelihood as well. But obviously, fans, the NFL has billions of fans, and nobody wants to see somebody 20 years from now who's struggling cognitively, or maybe in a wheelchair, or maybe just doesn't look right, doesn't have his life in order because his brain's not working. Nobody wants to see that. So that's why people have these opinions. It's out of respect and love for what Tua has been able to do, and out of your fellow human being, that you wouldn't want to see someone become a walking vegetable because they took too many bad hits in a football game. But at the end of the day, that's Tua's decision. And he just strikes me as the type of guy who's still going to try to play this game. But for right now, it's Skylar Thompson. Now, the big question Miami has to answer is, can Skylar Thompson orchestrate an offense that was built around Tua's abilities? This offense is built with complete speed to make run after the catch plays. This offense is built to throw the ball quickly, and nobody does it better than Tua. To get the ball to the receivers quickly in space and then have them make yards after the catch. Can Skylar Thompson do that? Does he have the same type of quick recognition, quick release as Tua? I doubt it. Now, it doesn't mean they can't function offensively. Maybe Mike McDaniel, who is an elite play caller in this league, makes some changes. They'll obviously have to run the ball more, which, they ran the ball a whole lot last week. As they were losing to Buffalo, they were still running the ball with Achane. Achane had an unbelievable game against Buffalo, even though nobody else on the Dolphins really did. The one thing about the Dolphins is their defense has been good so far. They only allowed 247 yards to the Bills, even though they lost by a lot. And they only allowed 267 to the Jaguars in their opening win. It's going to have to be good against the Seahawks team, which is starting to come and find itself offensively. So I think the Dolphins can fight hard. The big question is, can Skylar Thompson engineer the offense the way Tua did? Probably not, but does Mike McDaniel change this offense around? The one thing you have to remember, though, is Tua was perfect for the offense, not because of the quick delivery, because the Dolphins' offensive line isn't very good. If they try to change it for Skylar, if they try to change it so that it's more of a conventional drop back game, well, they're going to have problems because the offensive line is not very good. Seahawks, they were okay in their opener against the Broncos. They basically beat the Broncos because the Broncos are bad. Then they went across the country and beat the Patriots 23-20. I believe that was an overtime game. You started to see the offense come alive under Ryan Grubb. Metcalf had a 56-yard touchdown. Ryan Grubb is their offensive coordinator. This guy who came from Washington, University of. Did big things there. Obviously, you saw the offense with Michael Penix, with Roma Dunze, with Jalen McMillan, with Jalen Polk. All these guys are in the NFL, and they're all playing. Just shows you how much talent Washington had, but the scheme was fantastic. It was very downfield, and that's what you expect to eventually become of this Seahawks offense. Metcalf, the 56-yard touchdown, went over 100 yards. JSN went over 100 yards against the Patriots. Geno, 33 for 44. He's always been he's been an accurate quarterback since he took over as a starter for the Seahawks a couple of years ago. This downfield offense will come together. This could be a surprisingly good offensive team. They're a little banged up defensively right now on the front, and that worries you going up against this Dolphins run game. 4.5 points is doable. I like the Seahawks in this game mainly because I just don't know what you're going to get out of the Miami offense. Do I think Miami can hang in there? Yeah, I think they can hang in there. But I wouldn't be surprised if Seattle pulled away. It's a tough place to go and win. All right, another 4:25 game. Now, this is one of those road favorite games. The Ravens go into Dallas. The 0-2 Ravens, coming off a home loss to the Raiders, go into Dallas, and they're 1.5-point favorites over the Cowboys. It's only the second time in John Harbaugh's 17 seasons the Ravens have been 0-2. All right. They lose this game, they're 0-3. And that you would really start to wonder what's going on with the Ravens. And it's very possible they could lose this game. By the way, Dallas loses this game, they're 1-2. And they'd be coming off a blowout loss at home to New Orleans and then a loss of some capacity to the Ravens. You'd start to wonder if the wagons are going to circle around Mike McCarthy. The Ravens blew a 10-point lead. Their defense last week against the Raiders, we talked about it. Their defense has not been very good. They allowed 27 points to the Chiefs. They allowed 353 yards to the Chiefs. And then they allowed the Raiders to score 13 fourth-quarter points as they blew that 10-point lead. Minshew was 30 for 38 in that game. This is not the Ravens defense that you normally see. You do not normally see quarterbacks complete high percentages of passes against the Ravens defense. But Mahomes did it first. Minshew did it second. I did mention in my week 1 preview, I was worried a little bit about the Ravens. I thought their injury. I thought that everything they lost in the offseason, they lost a ton of guys on defense. They lost Patrick Queen. They lost Geno Stone. They lost the pass rusher, Clowney, right? They had their offensive line coach, unfortunately and tragically, pass away. I worried about this team going into this year. It felt a little better after they lost to the Chiefs because they hung in there. I thought they were actually going to get dismantled by the Chiefs, but they hung in there and almost won that game. You remember they had the touchdown taken away because the receiver's toe was on the line, or else maybe they win that game. But the reality is they're 0-2. They go into Dallas. Dallas is going to want to come off that terrible loss. So this will be a difficult game for the Ravens. Dallas, I thought Mike Zimmer was going to make a big difference in their defense. It looked like it would in the opener when they destroyed the Cleveland Browns. Then they come home and they get destroyed by the New Orleans Saints. They were shell shocked. They were blitzkrieged. I mean, their defense had no idea what it was doing against New Orleans play action. I watched the game. I rewatched it on film. It looked ugly. Is it correctable? Yeah, but they have to win this game because if they go to 1-2, then you talk about a short rest game. They got the Thursday night game against the Giants. Giants always usually give them a good game. Now they'll probably win that game. So even if they lose to the Ravens, they could be 2-2 against the Giants, but then they get Pittsburgh, then they get Detroit. So then you lose those games, you could be looking at 2-4. So if you're 1-2 going into the Giants, you have to win the Giants game to be 2-2, and then you got to win at least 1 out of 2 against the Steelers and the Lions to feel good about yourself going into the bye. You lose this game, and you lose 2 of those next 3 against the Giants, Lions, and Pitts, and you're going to hear a lot of noise around Mike McCarthy. Niners at the Rams, 425 game. You might as well just call this the banged up bowl. Now, somehow the Niners are 7.5-point favorites. You say, how can the Niners be 7.5-point favorites? They're not going to have Debo. They're not going to have Kittle. Not going to have McCaffrey. Not going to have Charvarius Ward. How can they be 7.5-point favorites? You know why? Because the Rams aren't going to have Cooper Kupp. The Rams aren't going to have Puka Nacua. And the Rams aren't going to have 3 starting offensive linemen. That's why. And they're coming off an awful loss to Arizona. So not good. Not good for the Rams. So you look at the Niners and say, you know what? With all those injuries, maybe they do win this game big. I said I was worried about the Niners going into the season because of their Super Bowl hangover. It didn't look like that initially in week 1. They had a nice win on prime time against the Jets, but they did not look good against the Vikings. And they are a different team when they don't have a Kittle or they don't have a Debo or they don't have a McCaffrey. Now they don't have all 3. All right, they really need Brock Purdy and Brandon Ayuk to get going. They just paid Ayuk all that money. They need that pass, that connection, that camaraderie to come. It hasn't been there so far. They need it against this Rams team that has just been dismantled by injuries. The Rams lost big, but they got blitzkrieged by Arizona last week. Their defense has been awful for the first 2 weeks of the year. And now Matthew Stafford has no weapons. He has no Nacua. He has no Kupp. I mean, they're basically going to ride Kyron Williams into the ground. He's been running the ball a lot. They always like to run their running backs into the ground. We'll see if Williams can hold up. Now, Stafford's really good at being able to make wide receivers when he's missing his wide receivers. So you look and you say Demarcus Robinson moves into their number 1 role. He's okay. They have a rookie who looked very good in the preseason. This is the guy to keep your eyes on. Jordan Whittington. He's a rookie. I believe he was a 4th-round pick. Probably going to step into a bigger role now in this offense. We'll see if they can brush the cobwebs off Tutu Atwell and get him involved. But the bottom line is this Rams offense is in trouble. They will get Alaric Jackson, their offensive tackle, back from, I believe it was a suspension. Maybe you'll see Blake Corum, their 3rd-round pick from Michigan, get more involved in the running game. He played in garbage time, 8 for 35 last week. Maybe he'll get a bigger role. But you know what? I don't know how the Rams are going to move the ball. I really don't. And I think they're already struggling defensively, and now you're facing this Niners team. Now they've seen the Niners. They know the Niners. The Niners are banged up themselves, so the Niners may have some issues moving the ball, but the Rams are struggling right now. Could the Niners win this game by 7.5 or more? Yeah, they really could. 425. Lions are 3-point favorites over the Cardinals. This is a really interesting game. This is another game where you got the home underdog, despite the fact that Arizona's coming off a really big win. Arizona figured out a way to get the ball against the Rams to Marvin Harrison after Marvin Harrison was basically a no-show in the passing game in week 1. People were wondering if Marvin Harrison was a bust already after 1 week. Well, he had more production on his first catch against the Rams than he did in the entire first week. He had he had a he had 2 touchdown catches and over 100 yards in the first quarter alone of that game. Kyler Murray had 3 touchdown passes and a perfect quarterback rating. They're getting good offense out of James Conner. Arizona's tough. Remember, in the game against Buffalo in their opener, they were winning that game. They didn't finish. Well, they certainly finished against the Rams. And now they're home. They face a Lions team that is coming off a tough loss at home, a Lions team that hasn't gotten it going together offensively. I thought this Lions team would be better offensively just because of the camaraderie, the symmetry there. Everybody's coming back. You got the offensive coordinator who didn't leave for a head coaching job, Ben Johnson, in the offseason. So I thought the Lions offense would hit the ground running. Really hasn't yet. Jared Goff so far has more interceptions, 3 than touchdown passes. Laporta, their tight end, you thought he would be more involved in the passing game and hasn't. Now they've gotten Jamison Williams more involved, but they just haven't been a great offense. They've been running the ball very well with Montgomery and with the other running back who catches all the passes for him, whose name's escaping me right now. They have a good Jahmyr Gibbs. They have a good running game, but they got to get the pass game going. This should be a good one. Their defense has been tough, but it could be better. Arizona has scored 69 points in the first 2 games. Arizona can be explosive offensively, but they're gonna meet their match a little bit with this Lions defense. Aiden Hutchinson is already off to a fast start, 5.5 sacks. Lions are 3-point favorites. This game to me could go anyway. I like the Lions in it, but the Cardinals wouldn't shock me if they made some noise in this game. Chiefs are in Atlanta, another road favorite, another home underdog, as the Chiefs are 4.5-point favorites over the Falcons. Look, I think with Isaiah Pacheco out, I think that's a bigger loss than people think. I don't know what the Chiefs have in terms of a running game without Pacheco. And you might think of the Chiefs as, they throw the ball all over Patrick Mahomes, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy. Yeah, but Pacheco has been a huge part of their offense. He gives them a toughness. He moved the chains, starting to catch the ball a little bit more. And they don't have Jerick McKinnon anymore. They don't have that 1A running back or that other guy. They're going to go with Carson Steele. They bring back Kareem Hunt. Who knows what Kareem Hunt still has left? Who knows what Carson Steele could do? I just think this gives Andy Reid more impetus to say, let's just pass the ball. Let's just throw the ball to Rashee Rice. Let's get Travis Kelce back more involved on first and second down. Kelce really hasn't done much this year. I don't know if people have recognized that. Kelce has not really been a huge threat. It's been Worthy. It's been Rashee Rice. It's been Kelce a little bit. As far as receiving, Kelce has caught what? I'll tell you right now. He's caught 4 passes for 39 yards. Isaiah Pacheco has more catches and more receiving yards than Travis Kelce through 2 games. But you're going to see a lot of Rashee Rice. You're going to see Xavier Worthy. I just wonder, to run the ball, will they get Worthy involved on end arounds? Is there somebody else? Could they use Rashee Rice a little bit like Debo? I mean, Rashee Rice is 205 pounds, not 215 pounds. But is there ways, screens or short passes, or do they give him a few carries in certain formations, Rashee Rice, to try to move the ball? This will be interesting because the Falcons defense was good. It is good. They showed you how good it is against the Eagles. They can stop the run. They can certainly defend the pass. They have a very good secondary, 2 very good safeties in Bates and Simmons, good corner in Terrell. Their linebackers flow fast. Judon is going to be a problem for the Chiefs. The Chiefs pulled their left tackle in the fourth quarter of that game last week. All right, the rookie left tackle out of BYU. They pulled him, and they put in the backup left tackle. Now they got Judon. Now they have to defend Grady Jarrett, who's been healthy this year. This is not going to be an easy game. Could the Falcons win this game? Yeah, they could. I think 4.5 is kind of a big number for the Chiefs going into Atlanta with the Falcons coming off the big win. The one thing about the Falcons, though, is that they can't fall behind by too much because Kirk Cousins still looks shaky to me. Doesn't look right. I know he had a great drive against the Eagles in the fourth quarter. We all saw it. He also missed a lot of throws in the first three quarters. It's good they got him under center. We'll see if they continue to do that. Bijan Robinson is obviously a star. They're going to have to lean on him. You saw Drake London make some big catches. But if you want to outscore the Chiefs, you want to beat the Chiefs, you need to move the chains. You got to score points. I don't think Ray McLeod could be your number 2 receiver. You're going to need more out of Kyle Pitts to win this game. You get a big game out of Kyle Pitts and Drake London, yes, you can beat the Chiefs as they try to figure out how they're going to go forward without Pacheco. You're at home. If Ray McLeod is your number 2 wide receiver, you're going to have a tough time beating the Chiefs. All right, Monday night game, Bills home against the Jags. Bills are 5.5-point favorites. They should be. The Jags are 0-2, and I'm just telling you, Doug P., it's not looking good for him. The wagons will start to circle if this offense continues to struggle and they lose and go to 0-3. There's already, Press Taylor. The owner is not a patient man, Shad Khan. I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but the Jaguars lost 5 of 6 games down the stretch last year. So if you count the 2 that they've lost to start the year 0-2, they have lost what? They've won 1 of their last 7 games. Okay, that's bad. You lose 7 out of 8, and your offense looks terrible. And right now, Lawrence is completing like 51% of his passes, has been unable to get anything going offensively. Evan Ingram has been banged up. This offense has looked terrible. And you're going into Buffalo where Josh Allen, with a completely different offense, has looked great. I'm telling you, if the Jaguars lose this game, and especially if they get blown out, they lose by more than 5.5, they lose by 6 or more, it's going to get ugly for Doug P. and Press Taylor in Jacksonville. Meanwhile, the Bills, they continue to roll. They lose everything offensively as far as, Steph Diggs and Gabe Davis. And what happens? Well, they're 2-0 because they're running the ball well with James Cook. Honestly, their offense hasn't looked great. Josh Allen has done enough, but you haven't seen an unlocking of Josh Allen getting the ball to Dalton Kincaid, or Josh Allen getting the ball to Mac Hollins, or Josh Allen getting the ball to Keon Coleman. He's just sort of been methodical. They've been an okay offense that has managed to still put points on the board. They put 28 points on the board against the Cards. They put 31 on the points against 31 points on the board. They did get some defensive help there against the Dolphins. But obviously right now they're rolling behind James Cook, who's had 150 yards in 2 games. And they're just getting what they need out of Josh Allen. Josh Allen's not even running the ball a whole lot. What is it, 11 carries for 40 yards? That's one game sometimes for Josh Allen. That's what he's done so far in 2 games. He's completing 74% of his passes, though. He hasn't thrown an interception. That is the big thing with Josh Allen. He's been reckless. We know this. But he's not giving the ball away, and he's spreading the ball around. Shakir, 8 catches for 96 yards. Coleman, 4 for 51. Cook, 4 for 49. Kincaid, 5 for 44. Eventually, I believe you're going to get some symmetry there. Somebody is going to step up and become a true number 1 receiver in that Bills offense. But as of now, they're getting by with what they've got. And I think they're going to beat the Jags. And it wouldn't surprise me if they beat them handily. Last game, Bengals. 0-2 Bengals are at home against the Commanders. And despite being 0-2, they're 7.5-point favorites. And you know what? They should be. They played well against the Chiefs. They always do. Burrow looked completely different against the Chiefs than he did in the opener against the Patriots. You saw him flexing the wrist. You wondered, is he healthy? Is he okay? He looked fine against the Chiefs. Could have won the game. Now, for everybody who's like, the Chiefs get all the calls. The Chiefs always get it. The refs are in their pockets. Well, that's what happens when you win 2 straight Super Bowls and 3 in the last 4 or 5 years, whatever it is. That's what happens when you build a championship contender perennially. You want to be that team that always gets the calls. And you know what? The D-back got there early. He did. And he hit the receiver. So it was defensive pass interference, as annoying as it may seem. So that's why the the Bengals are 0-2, but like I mentioned at the start, they were 0-2 a couple of years ago, and then they wound up winning the division. They can still win the division. They're going to get, it looks like T. Higgins, who was back at practice, could play. They need to unlock the Higgins and Chase in their pass offense. It's been a little bit sporadic right now. Jamar Chase is still waiting for the big breakout. They'll get it against the Commanders. The Commanders don't stop anybody. I mean, listen, if you can give up 3 passing touchdowns to Daniel Jones, you can give up 6 passing touchdowns to Joe Burrow. And so I don't expect this Commanders defense to go into Cincinnati and be able to stop the Bengals. You just want to see the Bengals get a little bit more rhythm going on in their passing game and, do better up front with their offensive line. But they never have a good offensive line. Honestly, they're always struggling with their offensive line, and they figure it out. The Commanders have played hard. Obviously, it was a great win. You get 7 field goals to beat Giants. You get a big win. You're 1-1 in your record, after losing the opener. So you feel good about being able to get a division win coming off that first game where you lost to the Bucs. It's not been great for Jaden Daniels. He's running around a lot, which you would expect. He needs to get the ball to Terry McLaurin. The passing game for them has to come. It has to evolve. I talked about that with Caleb Williams. Don't lose faith. Well, don't lose faith in Jaden Daniels either. It's kind of tough when you see Todd Bowles' defense in week 1. Then you go up against the Giants and you're running the ball really well in week 2. Their offense pass offense will get there eventually, but right now it's not there. You got guys like Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler catching more passes than Terry McLaurin. That can't happen. They've got to figure out a way to get the ball to Terry McLaurin. But this is going to be a difficult game for them. They're going to have to keep up points-wise with the Bengals. Can they do it with Jaden Daniels running around? Maybe. The Bengals are known to give up explosive plays. They did all last year. So I can see the Bengals holding their own. I can see them covering this big 7.5-point spread, but it wouldn't shock me if the Bengals were able to put them away pretty handily. All right, so that wraps up the games. Now I give 3 picks at the end of the week, and I have been terrible. I hope nobody has taken my suggestions. I'm 0-6 so far when picking with the lines, so that's not good. I'm going to turn it around. Last week I lost on the Ravens. I think everybody did. I lost on the Jags. I will not make that mistake again. I lost on the Chiefs to cover against the Bengals. Maybe I should have known better because the Bengals always play well against the Chiefs. I'll tell you what I got this week. I like the Bills giving the Jags 5.5 points. I like the Bills to cover against the Jags. I like the Seahawks to cover 4.5 over Miami. I just don't know what Miami's going to be with Skylar Thompson. I think that the Seahawks will continue to get better offensively. They're at home, so I like them to cover the 4.5. And I like the Packers. They're getting 3 points in Tennessee. I still think the Titans are too reckless to be able to be given the benefit of the doubt. I think the Packers showed you that they can win on their backup quarterback, and now they're at home getting 3. I like the Packers to, at very least, cover, if not outright win. And hopefully I start to get on a better track here with my picks, but I feel pretty good about those 3 picks. Week 1, I felt terrible because it's week 1. Week 2, I was Week 3, I feel a lot better about my picks. So we'll see how I do and if I can finally get off the schneid as I'm 0-6 after 2 weeks. All right, everybody, enjoy your football watching this weekend.